You're listening to Hysteria, the podcast that knows that farm stories should stay on the farm.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
So here's the thing. I mean, I think everyone at this point has talked a lot about Kristi Noem killing her dog, writing about it in her book, and being like, why is everyone talking about the fact that I killed my dog? I don't know, Kristi. You seem stupid. When I texted one of my friends from home about the story, she was like, farm stories should stay on the farm. It's like rule one. Like, you have to do weird and gross shit if you live on a farm. I've never heard of anyone having to shoot a puppy. That just seems over the top based on the farm
most
stories.
people just rehome them, right? You rehome a puppy.
Maybe Kristi doesn't know any other people.
She may not know any other people, but you know the one thing that I think, because I've like done a book or two. This was the thing I thought was the funniest when I looked into the story. I'm like, who the fuck blurbed her book? Like, who wanted their name on the back of her book saying, this is a great book? And I just had one that I wanted to share because I feel like you will enjoy this. Okay? Quote, during COVID, Kristi Noem proved she was the governor with the best instincts. This book is grounded in the same common sense and fearless fight for freedom. It's the reminder we need in these dark days to never lose hope in America. Get ready to be inspired. This from Rachel Campos Duffy, mom of 9, and co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, also former Real World cast member. So here's a funny thing about blurbs. Sometimes people will be like, will you blurb my book? Here's a template. Fuck that. I always read the book because sometimes you never know what you're going to be blurbing. So Rachel Campos Duffy, I guess we know where you stand.
Rachel, okay. I'm sorry. I don't want to shit on Rachel Campos Duffy because it's like too easy. But she was like too dumb to be on The View. You know? Like
she was too dumb to be on The Real World.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, she was on the best season of The Real World. One of the best.
You think she and Puck are still friends?
I don't know if Puck is even still alive.
Oh, shit. That's a good point.
Oh, yeah. He seems like a skateboarding accident at age 43 kind of guy. Yeah, Kristi Noem was on the VP shortlist, and for some reason, I think wants off, maybe.
Or do you think she thought this was going to help her out?
That's two good questions, two huge questions. In her book about her life, she wrote down, or more realistically, she paid somebody to write down for her, the story of the fact that she had a puppy, a 14-month-old puppy that was like not a good bird dog. And then killed some of their chickens. And so she killed it. And she also decided to kill a goat. Sometimes there are things that people write in books that I'm like, that should be for your therapist, you know?
That should be for your notes app.
That should be, or that should just be kept in the lockbox of your dark spirit and taken to the grave.
Yes. Not everything is meant for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like this weird, look, I grew up in a state over, 2 states over from South Dakota. My dad hunts pheasants in South Dakota, like semi-familiar with the culture, right? And my dad grew up on a farm. We grew up raising animals. Like, there's gross shit that happens, right? Like,
yep.
Really unpleasant things, like an injured animal that needs to be humanely killed, and you don't have time for the vet to come.
Right.
And like, but those are like extreme circumstances that are like horrible for the people that have to act out what's right, you know?
Right. Like they're not, because those things are real and they're nature and they're the world. They're not a bad pet mom, Kristi, who didn't crate her puppy and then the puppy killed the chickens. A lot more human error than puppy error, I feel like, in this whole scenario.
Here's something that came to me as I was like reading about this like Kristi Noem dog killer news cycle. Could it get worse? I don't know. It does seem Veepish to me.
Oh,
like,
yes.
Like VP Myers thinking about like appointing somebody to their cabinet, and then it comes out in their memoir that they killed their puppy, and we're like, what? This is a thing people do on farms. Kristi, it is not a thing people do on farms.
It's not.
What if she made it up in this weird like fit of misguided?
Utterly possible.
Yeah,
Utterly
misguided,
possible.
like Midwestern pick-me-hood. Like she's a pick-me who went too far.
Erin, a person who would write about this is also a person who would think it was cool to make it up.
Yeah, and just taking a step back and looking at how Republicans tend to view women who claim that things happened to them or that they did they view people as liars all the time. They confess by accusing. So I don't know. Look, people are pretty mad. I think it's a weird thing to say, regardless of whether or not she did it. She could be making it up. Let's consider that possibility.
All of the above.
She does. I mean, her teeth are lying to you. They're not real. What else?
She's another victim of chicklethood.
God, you get the new teeth and then you publish a book about killing your dog and everyone hates it.
Get the new teeth, you take them out at night, you put them on the nightstand.
Not if they're veneers. They grind that shit down.
Hers look like you take them out at night. They look like Halloween teeth.
Yeah. Oh man, that is a shame. Right now we're kind of in the point in the Veep stakes. I hate that term, but it's what came to my mind at this time of day. We're at a point where, because it's Donald Trump doing the picking, we're seeing a lot of people who want to be picked lining up to humiliate themselves, because that is what Donald Trump tends to like. But he also doesn't really reward the people who have humiliated themselves on the other side of things.
Totally. He does not like a backlash.
No, but he kind of, I think he likes seeing how far people are willing to go to kind of debase themselves.
It is Erin, it is his origin story. It is The Apprentice. It is everything. He lives for this.
Right. And he only knows how to do one thing. He's not like coming up with new things. This is just his MO. This is what he does.
You think he called Kristi, say she's fired?
I don't know. He does seem a little doddering. There was a concerning interview in Time magazine that came out this week that was published. You can read the transcript. It's an 83-minute read, according to... Okay, so you know how at the top of like articles now, they're like, this is going to take you 5 minutes. It said, this is going to take you 83 minutes. And I was like, no, it's not. I'm a fast reader. Yes, it is.
Yes, I skimmed and then I found summaries.
But I can't skim because the way that he uses language does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, what is happening right now? I feel like I just got off a plane in a country where I have taken 2 years of middle school that language, and I'm trying to understand like instructions from the gate agents. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, it was concerning because he seems like his brain is broken.
Mm-hmm.
In a pretty bad way. But it was also concerning because he made some comments, Alyssa, that you noted about abortion. And I have a theory on it. But first, I'd like to hear, I know you took extensive notes. Like, what were the comments? What was the context? She's holding up a note card.
I can't help it. With Trump, you got to write it down because it's so crazy. You might forget it. So Trump, again, it was an interview. He was asking questions. When asked about abortion, Trump said that it should be up to states to make all decisions on abortion, including, Erin, if states want to monitor pregnancies to know if someone had an abortion.
Okay, so he thinks that tracking pregnancies and like periods and shit is fine because, as we have discussed on this show, anywhere from like a quarter to half of pregnancies end in miscarriage. So like in order to track pregnancies, you kind of actually have to track like periods.
Right. And Erin, here's the thing about this that actually just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, is that he has dabbled in this before. Remember, he had that absolute maniac that he picked who had no experience to run the Office of Refugee Resettlement that was tracking the periods of migrants.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's my theory on this. I think Donald Trump has been coached about how to handle the abortion question because I'm sure that their internal research, but also external research obtained by looking around can bring you the information necessary to conclude abortion is not a winning issue for Republicans. Abortion bans are not a winning issue for Republicans. In fact, they are a real like shooting yourself in the dick issue. And I think Donald Trump was trained. He had someone sit him down and be like, Donald, this is just what you're going to say over and over again. It is up to the states. It is up to the states. It is up to the states. But when people ask him questions like, okay, so like, could a state track pregnancies? Like they didn't mention this, but that's literally what they did in Romania.
Right.
Underneath the totalitarian government where like millions of people fled and women died. And it was like decades long in Romanian orphanages. Ask your parents. I'm just going to say that. Right. Ask your parents about what was happening in Romania because that's what they were doing, tracking pregnancies. But I think Donald Trump is so like uncreative, unthoughtful, and he was so trained on this issue that he's just repeating, leave it up to the states no matter what absurd proposition is put in front of him.
I think that is correct. I also think, though, that if someone actually has no ability for independent thought, that's like highly concerning if they might be president.
Yeah. Yeah. I also get the impression that Donald Trump is like super grossed out by the female body and reproduction.
Don't you just want to throw a tampon at him?
I just want him to watch a video of a human birth. I want him to watch a video of a human birth. No, I bet you $1 million. I don't have $1 million, but I bet you $1 million. He was not in the room with any of his wives when his children were being born. And like in the 80s, you should be in the room. Yeah. It wasn't like weird to, anyway, I bet he wasn't there.
It was past the period of being outside with a cigar.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think he just kind of just hammered on the answer that he was trained to give rather than think for himself because he's lazy. During that interview, he also mentioned that he would be open to a nationwide mifepristone ban.
Yes. His allies are very pro Comstock Act.
Yeah, that it's just, I hope that people keep asking him about that because it is really worrisome.
It only helps us. Also, this is my favorite. He also said in the interview that he's heard, because he's always hearing things. He's heard people like his dictator talk. He's like, I've heard people like when I say I'm going to be a dictator. People like it.
Okay. Journalists who get the chance to interview Donald Trump, I'm sure there are so many of them who are listening to this podcast. Ask from who? Who? What people?
One name that you're not related to.
Yeah. Who said that? Like, just follow up. When he says people keep coming up to me. What people? What people, Donald?
I mean, the only people he's seeing are in court, so.
Oh, God. And he's falling asleep. Poor little baby. Okay, so we're talking about leaving things up to the states. As we are seeing now, I'm not sure that it's funny that this is like Donald Trump's best case scenario for discussing the abortion issue. Like, leave it up to the states. I guess maybe internal research found that it's more palatable than like, no, we're going to do a nationwide ban at 15 weeks. Right. But then, alongside of him coming out and being like, look, I'm so reasonable. Let the states decide. Every week there's a new headline. This week, Florida's abortion ban is going into effect. Mm-hmm. And it's a bad one. As we record today on May 1st, you'll be hearing this on May 2nd or later. Florida's 6-week abortion ban has officially taken effect. So Floridians, stay away from sperm and Nick Cannon. If healthcare providers provide abortions, they could be fined or jailed for up to 5 years. This severely impacts the South. People in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, and more would travel to Florida to access abortions after their state signed strict abortion laws. Now people in Florida and that entire region have to go to other options, which could be costly or downright impossible. Or, force people to resort to extra legal means, self-administered abortions. In some contexts, it's like semi-safe to administer them yourself. Right. But if you are somebody that doesn't have like a lot of savvy, a lot of information, it's pretty, oh God, I just think people are going to hurt themselves.
Here's another thing, Erin. If you are a pregnant person, why would you go on vacation to Florida?
No,
like
don't.
This is fascinating to me. It is their number one industry, I think, or top something. And why would you go? God forbid something happened. You had to go to the hospital. You had to go to the doctor. Why would you ever go to Florida? They're really
Yeah.
making a mess for themselves.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, we have seen all over the country that these abortion bans are impacting pregnant people's ability to access emergency care and to access health care. Doctors are afraid to take care of patients who are pregnant because they're afraid they'll run afoul of abortion bans if what ends up happening is that an abortion is necessary for this person's care. I think I've mentioned this before on the pod, but my girlfriends from college are all getting together for the first time in like a bajillion years. And we were originally going to all meet in Texas because we live all over the place and it was just physically,
in the middle.
Yeah, it's just easiest to get to. And like Austin has enough stuff to do for a weekend before you really sit there and think like, is Austin good? And then you're like, no, it's not. But you know, it's fine. So we were going to go to Austin and two of us are like pregnant. Like when we were planning it, two of us over the course of planning it became pregnant. And so my friends were like, we're actually uncomfortable with making two pregnant women travel to Texas because, my friend and I both like are pregnant with like wanted and planned babies.
Right.
But like, what if something happens to one of us? And the only way we can get healthcare or treatment for whatever happened is for us to be like near death. It's just not,
Why?
Safe.
It's just
not
why?
safe. It's
there
not
are
safe.
other choices.
Yeah. So we moved it to California. And,
Much better.
A few weeks ago, there was somebody who was scheduled to give a talk. I think it was a physician, not an OBGYN, but another physician who was scheduled to give a talk at a conference in Texas, but she was pregnant. And she's like, I'm not going there. It's not safe. Don't go to Florida. Don't go to Texas. If you are a matriarch or patriarch of a family and you are planning a large group vacation, consider not planning one to Texas or Florida for your extended family.
I hear the Poconos are making a comeback.
Yeah, Poconos are nice. California is great. I mean,
the Catskills.
We're out of room here, but there are plenty of hotels. So if you want to come out here. But yeah, it's become very dangerous, and the Florida law has like no exceptions. It's Texas style. Basically, you have to be physically on the verge of death before a provider can give an abortion. And but luckily this fall, Floridians will have the opportunity to vote on Amendment 4, which will codify the right to abortion up to 24 weeks in the state's constitution. And in the meantime, a reminder that Mother's Day is coming up and nothing says I love you like a vasectomy in a red state.
Makes a great last minute gift, Erin.
Absolutely. Also, if you want more information on this, especially if you live in the South, go to votesaveamerica.com/fuckbans.
Well, Erin, in slightly better news, we have a couple of wins for trans people in the U.S. this week. According to Erin in the Morning, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that first, gender identity is a protected characteristic, and two, banning gender-affirming healthcare is unconstitutional. So Medicaid cannot ban any treatment of gender dysphoria. This is good.
Yeah, that's great.
This is good. The decision will impact all states, especially Republican-led ones that have been pushing anti-trans bills. The ruling derives from bills in two states in particular, North Carolina and West Virginia. The bill, Erin, it's like you got to try hard to be this shitty. The bill in North Carolina prevented their state employees from accessing trans health care. The bill in West Virginia prevented trans people enrolled in Medicaid from using their insurance for gender-affirming surgeries. So, South Carolina might feel the impact of this ruling soon. At the end of May, the state Senate is set to debate a bill that would prevent trans youth from accessing gender-affirming care.
Okay, I'm sorry. I say this respectfully, semi-respectfully. West Virginia, don't you have bigger problems?
Honestly.
Don't you have bigger problems? There is a finite amount of time in your day as a lawmaker. Should you be allotting this much of it to this?
No. Erin, you know what I would do if I were in West Virginia? If I were a lawmaker in West Virginia? I would be spending my time thinking of worker retraining programs so that all the coal miners could have modern jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do.
I would, there's a lot of problems there that have yet to be addressed or fixed.
Opioids.
Yeah. Look. Yeah, you can care about more than one thing at once. I'm just saying, why are you caring about this thing
so much?
It's bonkers. It feels like pathological at this point. Look, we are not lawyers. We are two American non-lawyers.
Two nice ladies.
Which is fine. I thought about going to law school, and then I looked at how much it costs, and I was like, that's dumb.
But can I just say something?
What?
You'd be such a good lawyer.
It's because I cannot not argue.
I know. It's so funny because I am the opposite of that. And that's what I love most about you, because I know that's why I would want you to be my lawyer, because I'd be like, I didn't do it. Don't you believe me? And you would come in and you'd save me.
Oh, I would. Okay. Well, you got to get me a cape first, a homemade cape. And
get you a cape and a law scholarship.
A law scholarship. So here's the thing. I don't know what the path forward is for supporters and foes of this, but considering the decision was made at the circuit level, we can only assume that somebody's going to make an appeal.
Of course.
Try to kick it up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has surprisingly not been the shittiest when it comes to trans issues, and has kind of almost not wanted to deal with them. It seems like they've dodged a lot, or they've tried to write like very narrow rulings that ultimately the trans side of the issue prevails. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. But I feel like this is a pretty sweeping ruling, declaring that gender identity is a protected characteristic. So that is exciting. Rare good news. Oh, Alyssa, more health news. You have something you wanted to flag for our listeners.
Oh, Erin, I could go on about this one forever. Okay, so to all our listeners with breasts, listen up. A panel of medical experts now recommend getting mammograms beginning at the age of 40. This recommendation reverses the task force's previous one from 2009, which said to start regularly checking at 50. Now, Erin, here's my thing with all this. Prevention. Okay, if you want to be just a rabid capitalist, right, which insurance companies are, prevention costs so much less than treatment. So I don't know why we have to keep arguing about when people can get mammograms, as if we're going to bankrupt America if women at 40 or younger are getting mammograms. Now, the reason that the task force made this recommendation is because back in January, the Journal of the American Medical Association published a study about the surge in rates of cancer in women below the age of 50, and it puzzled medical experts. They say the increase, here's a wild one for you, Erin, the increase during the past 2 decades has mostly been driven by breast cancers fueled by the female hormone estrogen.
No.
What?
No. Okay,
Erin?
sorry. No. Whatever. I'm sure there are a lot of people who know a lot more about menopause and HRT than I do that are just banging their heads against their desks right now.
Beyond.
But anyway.
And the one thing that this does not cover is, so Erin, half of women over 40 have dense breast tissue. I have dense breast tissue. I've been going through this for almost 8 years now. You have historically had to go, you get your mammogram, they squish your titties down, and then they tell you, you have dense breasts, you have to come back, right? And you have to come back.
Can't they just tell by feeling? Why do they have to squish them?
Here's the better thing, Erin. How come after my first mammogram, when they identified I have dense breast tissue, why have I had to go through this rigmarole of every year going for the mammogram, them once again telling me I have dense breast tissue? Guess what? It's not getting less dense. Then I have to go back for the MRI or ultrasound, right? Why can't I just every year get the MRI or ultrasound to check my boobies? But such is not the case. And it's weird because doctors, as part of this task force, said, quote, no scientific evidence proves that supplemental imaging by either MRI or ultrasound reduces breast cancer progression. And unfortunately, insurance tends not to cover these additional tests, often forcing higher-risk patients to pay out of pocket for this helpful care. Minoritized populations like Black and Jewish people are more likely than others to get and die from breast cancer before the age of 50. So the one thing I wanted to flag for our listeners to pay attention to, Hysteria fave, Connecticut Rep. Rosa DeLauro introduced the Find It Early Act in 2022 with other Hysteria fave Katie Couric, who also has dense breasts and whose breast cancer was detected with additional screening. The bill would require insurance companies to cover additional screenings for women with dense breasts. So while DeLauro says this is a step in the right direction, it still misses the mark and fails to protect women with this kind of breast tissue.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions.
Hit me.
Why do insurance companies feel like in order to obtain care, we need to run through an essentially like American Ninja Warrior course of
exactly
obstacles? Erin, it's so ridiculous.
I am like in a flotation device with a like foam noodle, just trying to like beat my way through the insurance system.
No, honestly, maybe it's more like what's that? An old Nickelodeon show, Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yes.
And then like a monster comes out and is like, "No, you're not pre-approved.
Take your dense breasts and go back to start."
But I do have a second follow-up question. I recently had to get an MRI, and it took me, I was considered like, the reasoning behind my getting an MRI was considered urgent.
Right.
And it took me 3 weeks to get an appointment in a major metropolitan area. So how is our existing medical infrastructure going to handle that? Because I could honestly, like, I think that it's a really good idea to make more effective imaging available to people who cannot reliably be diagnosed with a mammogram. But at the same time, like, how are we going to do that? Like, what is the reality of our medical infrastructure?
Our medical infrastructure, Erin, is not keeping up with science.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I feel like people will have to wait like 6 months, 8 months for these appointments.
I agree, though still better than not getting it at all.
Don't we have blood tests at this point?
One last thing that's worth noting. This recommendation does not apply to women with a personal history of breast cancer or those with a genetic marker for the condition, like the BRCA gene. They're advised to be screened earlier and more often.
Okay. So you can get a blood test to screen for the gene, which is probably a lot cheaper than getting into a Legends of the Hidden Temple style brawl with your insurance company in order to get advanced imaging that would be helpful for your peace of mind. But if you're not like a super high risk person, you will end up not ultimately needing. So like take the blood test first.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
Take the blood test. We just need to use all the tools at our disposal.
Yeah, another tool at our disposal that I would really like to see lawmakers tackle is environmental factors that contribute to cancer. Why are women who are between 40 and 50 developing breast cancer? I do not believe that it's estrogen. I'm sorry. I don't.
It feels like there must be other things at play.
I feel like there might be something in our air and water that is contributing to increased rates of cancer in young people. I don't know. I'm just saying.
You know what's funny, Erin? I read an article years ago that said women in America suffer from perimenopause almost worse than any other continent because of all the parabens in our products. Oh,
God. I read something this week that said that women in perimenopause are 40% more likely to suffer depressive symptoms, which is interesting because that aligns with the time that doctors are less likely to believe you when you tell them what's wrong with you.
Do you know that a symptom of perimenopause can be frozen shoulder?
What?
Yes, Erin, nobody knows enough. We are not given enough.
Frozen shoulder.
Frozen shoulder.
That sounds like a cut of meat.
Yep. Your arm basically feels like one when you have it.
I also heard this week from my doctor that a symptom of depression can be irritability and bouts of rage.
Who knew?
So if you are irritable, angry, and your shoulder feels like a hunk of frozen meat, you might want to talk to a doctor who takes perimenopausal symptoms seriously, and you definitely want to get screened for breast cancer using whatever resources are available to you. Okay, there is a Supreme Court election in the state of Georgia. A seat on the Georgia Supreme Court is up for grabs this May. While most judges run unopposed, Judge Andrew Pinson is the only judge of the four incumbents running that's getting a challenger. His challenger's name is John Barrow, which sounds like a Revolutionary War name. John Barrow is a Democrat, former House representative. He's hoping that he can unseat Mr. Pinson and capitalize on the energy that voters have against abortion bans. His election to the court won't change the court's conservative majority, but at least he will get the loneliest job in the world, being the only liberal judge on a court that is otherwise 100% conservative. But look, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single Democrat.
Single Democrat. And who doesn't love an upset?
Who doesn't love an upset? I think that these state level races can kind of sneak up on you. We just had a special election in New York that flipped a seat to Democrat, right?
Yes.
And now Republicans only have a 1-seat majority in the House.
Thanks, George Santos.
Which is very funny. I'm sorry, it's very funny. 1-seat majority.
I mean, look, if nothing else, George Santos was a good wake-up call to the Democratic Party of New York State that they've been asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. He's bringing back his drag character, isn't he?
What?
I know, it makes him more likable is the thing. Like he's so contemptible. He's such a liar, whatever. But like in drag, less so.
I mean, look, Erin, do we need to know anything more about George Santos, that he made more money on Cameo than he did as a member of Congress?
No, I don't think we do. But good for him. Get that money, Lady George Santos.